Hello, and welcome to episode 3 of the C-Suite Mama podcast. I'm your host, Shay Campbell. Thank you so much for coming back and joining me today. You will see today I'm here by myself. I realized over the first couple episodes, you didn't really get a chance to learn about who I am and what I do and how I arrived here on this journey. I also want to share a couple hot topics with you. I also would love to talk about some things that I'm experiencing as a mom, and it would be great to hear your feedback. So let's get into it. As I said, I'm Shay Campbell. Currently, as this episode is being recorded, I am the Chief Health Equity Officer for a behavioral health organization here in Western New York. I've been serving in this function for 4 months at the time of this recording. Immediately prior to that position, I served as the Chief Diversity Officer for the City of Buffalo, in the office of our Mayor Byron Brown, who is the city's first Black mayor, serving in 5 terms. And I have the privilege to create a really amazing team. But in my current role, I'm leading what I call both the goal of health equity and the process for getting there. For those of you who are not in the healthcare space or the social work space and are not familiar with the concept of health equity is when individuals have the opportunity to live healthy lives free of any barriers to doing that. And so in my function, I make sure that our programs and services are supporting our clients and supporting our community, most importantly, in achieving that goal at a high level. And so some of that looks like supervising and supporting our Black mental health response team, also supporting some of our community engagement efforts, as well as our central intake team, and then working collaboratively with our data team to make sure that we have equitable outcomes across all of our programs. So with all of that said, how did I get here to this position of the inaugural Chief Health Equity Officer at this organization? As I mentioned, this isn't my first run in the C-suite. Prior to this, being in politics, I had the opportunity to meet some really amazing people, build an incredible network. But even before that, I was recruited by the city from another behavioral health organization where I served as the Chief Equity and Inclusion Officer. And even though I was in the C-suite in that organization, I didn't start there. I actually started as the director of diversity, equity, and inclusion at this behavioral health organization. Fortunately, the leader at the organization, who I hope that you have the opportunity to meet in a future episode, understood the importance of diversity, equity, and inclusion needing to be elevated to a decision-making position. And so it was elevated to the C-suite. And so that was where I really got my first start in the C-suite. And that was just a little shy of 4 years ago, being in this C-suite position. And so 4 years ago, I found myself operating at a high level, but not necessarily having the blueprint for what it looked like to be successful and to continue to grow in my career. But fortunately, because of some beautiful relationships that I developed even before that time, I had the opportunity and continue to be supported and nurtured and mentored in the process to develop myself as a senior level leader. But even leading up to that, I say all the time, I was prepared for that moment because every single one of my positions, primarily all in health and human services, prepared me for that time. I learned some really great lessons, made really amazing relationships, did my very best to keep my reputation clean, so that folks would look forward to working alongside me and partnering and collaborating. But my career in the C-suite did not just begin with an opportunity to be in the C-suite. It started with developing myself as an individual, developing myself as a leader, which takes particular skill sets, and really just doing the work to build and grow my network, and really doing the work to identify gaps in skill sets and following opportunities that would develop me in the places that I knew I needed a little bit more support. And so that is how I ended up here in the C-suite, but still recognizing the importance of having a community. I've said on a previous episode that I consider myself to very much be a girl's girl. And so it's important for me to have other like-minded women surrounding me and on this journey together. And so that's why we are here, not just with this podcast, but with the community of C-suite mamas, women who are mothers and trying to figure this all out at a high level, and also the women who were just like me, for those of you who are like me, that would like to build your career and grow and develop your professional career. And it's totally possible, whether you are a partnered, married, or a single mom looking to be in the C-suite. And so I hope over time, as you continue to tune in, that we can share some wisdom and insight and support each other in this journey of being in the C-suite. And so that's a little bit about me. I look forward to hearing more about all of you and your journeys, and hopefully you share some of your questions and your insight and wisdom for this journey. So let's get into the next segment. So forgive me, I don't have all this stuff committed to memory, so we are going to refer to our notes. Before we get into some of the kind of advice portion of the show, let's talk a little bit about some hot topics. In this portion, I really want to highlight women, mothers who are in leadership roles, who are supporting one another, or maybe some not so supportive pieces of hot topics in the news. So I want to share with you an article that I read yesterday in the Buffalo News that spoke about philanthropist Mackenzie Scott. For those of you that don't know, Mackenzie Scott is the ex-wife of Amazon founder Jeff Bezos. And so this headline reads, philanthropist Mackenzie Scott gives $2 million each to Peace Prince and Push Buffalo. For my folks who are outside of Buffalo, maybe some of you who are in Western New York that don't know, Peace Prince and Push Buffalo are two nonprofit organizations that are here and they're local. The cool part about these two nonprofits is that they are women-led. And so these two women-led organizations, Peace Prince supports individuals who were formerly incarcerated and they are re-entering society. So our returning citizens, sometimes they're referred to, that is led by a Buffalo local, Miss Cindy McEachin. I'm not sure if I'm saying her name. Please forgive me. She is the president and CEO at Peace Prince Buffalo, with this $2 million grant or gift, rather. And then Push Buffalo, that is led by Dawn Wells Clybourne. That's the executive director at Push Buffalo. Push Buffalo does a lot of work as it relates to sustainable housing and housing activism. For those that don't know, safe and affordable housing is a big part of health equity. And so I just want to shout out these two amazing women that are really making a difference for underrepresented groups. Shout out to Mackenzie Scott, who has invested, I think the article mentions it here. I can't find it exactly, but you can refer to it in the Buffalo News, several $1 million in the Buffalo area, specifically with Buffalo nonprofits. And so from one C-suite mama to another, and to the women whose organizations had the opportunity to receive this gift, congratulations. We see you and we recognize all of your hard work. We are so proud of you. Nonprofit is no joke. It's not an easy thing to lead nonprofit efforts. And so we are very excited about the work. I don't know if these women have children, but they are women nonetheless. And so we are so excited and proud of the work that they are doing. So congratulations. So for our specific content today, I want to talk to you about strategies for mother leaders. And I have a whole bunch of stuff here that we could talk about today, but I feel like we would be here for a very long time because I could expound on all of this for a little bit. So I'm just going to highlight a few points, and maybe we'll come back for a part 2 for strategies of mother leaders. One of the strategies that I want to talk about is the power of visibility. Okay. I know sometimes visibility is something that I struggle with, and you probably don't believe it if I'm sitting here behind a camera doing a podcast. But I'm stretching myself. This is certainly a challenge for me, but I do recognize it as something that's necessary, this community. But visibility is certainly something that will help move your career forward. You want to be intentional about creating more visibility for yourself. And so what does that mean? It doesn't mean that you have to go and start a podcast. And visibility, certainly it doesn't mean that you have to be super active on social media, although social media can help. But there's some other ways that you can increase your visibility as a professional. And so I want to give you a couple strategies for doing that. One of the ways to increase your visibility is through speaking opportunities. Speaking opportunities are certainly ways, or certainly a way to position yourself as a thought leader in whatever your space might be. And so we can use me for an example. Most of my work right now is focused on health equity. In times prior, my work was really focused on diversity, equity, and inclusion. And so I often, at some point I didn't really have to look for the speaking opportunities, but in the early stages, it was looking for opportunities that would allow me to present and speak on the topics that I was passionate about and knowledgeable about, and the things that I was doing every day. And so you want to think about, whether that's finance, if it's accounting, if it is social justice, if whatever it might be, maybe it's mental health, you want to look out for speaking opportunities. So you might say, I hear you. How do I find these speaking opportunities? Well, maybe you are online and you're on LinkedIn and you see former conferences that have happened or conferences that are going on. Maybe you connect with the folks who are hosting these conferences. Usually conferences that you see both in person and virtual are annual things or quarterly or some other kind of frequency. And so you want to connect with those hosts, introduce yourself, that is stretching outside of your comfort zone, but talk about what it is that you have, what expertise you have to offer. And then ask for them to keep you in mind for future opportunities. Another way to increase your visibility is through leadership projects. This strategy of volunteering myself for leadership projects, hands down, really changed the game for me early on in my career. This is important because it does a couple things. Not only does it demonstrate to your senior leaders who you hope to be your future colleagues that you are interested in the organization, that you have a passion for whatever it is that you do. That is one thing that volunteering for leadership projects will do. But it also will help you develop a set of skills that you might not have had otherwise, or it will help you to stretch yourself as, completing a project management, overseeing a project with deliverables. That is really important for you to do. And so when there's an area of need, you want to volunteer for those projects. I think back to a particular time when I worked in a very large healthcare system, and there was a need that came up because there were some folks that were either let go or quit. I don't remember, but there was a particular department that needed some area of oversight. They needed additional support because there was no leadership in that area. And at the time, I didn't have a whole lot on my plate, but I volunteered to support this area on an interim basis. Ultimately, that area ended up becoming mine, but what came from it was the opportunity to manage a budget that was a couple $1 million. It was the opportunity to manage a team that was an interdisciplinary team that I would not have had the opportunity to do otherwise. It was grant management and a handful of skills that I didn't have access to. But because I took the time to volunteer to support in one particular way, it really helped to develop me as a professional with additional skills. Not only that, it gave me access to leaders in the organization that I probably wouldn't have access to otherwise, who continue to pour into my career, that has still helped me to this day. One of my professional mentors that still supports me to this day. So don't discount volunteering for projects. I know that we can sometimes be seemingly overworked and it can seem like a lot to volunteer. But if you are looking to move your career forward, volunteering for a special project goes a very long way. And so look for opportunities to say yes and develop your own skill sets. It will help you 100 times over. Another way to increase your visibility is through networking. And networking can look like a couple things. You can do some digital networking through LinkedIn. There's so much power in leveraging LinkedIn. That is a whole separate conversation, but I will say for the mothers who are not yet in these senior leadership positions, if you are not on LinkedIn, pause this episode right now and create your LinkedIn profile. You can go to YouTube and get lots of instruction on how to leverage your LinkedIn account. That is so essential. I have connected with so many amazing people just by having a LinkedIn presence. If you already have your LinkedIn account and you haven't looked at it in the last 5 to 10 years or however long, pause this episode right now. Go update your headshot and re-engage on LinkedIn. That is a form of networking. You know, you can really see what's happening in your industry. You can find out about conferences. You can connect with thought leaders. You can position yourself as a thought leader simply by having a presence on LinkedIn. If you want to be in person, and I shouldn't say if you want to be in person, you really should be in person when we are talking about networking, but look for your local opportunities to network. What professional organizations are hosting this networking happy hour? You can go on meetup.com or you can go on Eventbrite to see what's happening in your local area. Get your business cards. If necessary, you know, get your digital business card. You can create that for free. There's resources I can link in the show notes. And you want to make sure that you have your contact information and show up. As difficult as it can be, sometimes you have to do it alone and do it afraid. Get your glass of wine, whatever your beverage of choice. Sometimes I just choose my glass of seltzer water in a wine glass. And I call it my prop in networking situations to just make me feel more comfortable, especially when I have to show up by myself. But networking is so important. Flash on your brightest smile. Make sure you have your breath mints ready to go and you work the room. You are introducing yourself. Crystal gave some really great tips on how to work the room and her strategies for networking. So I encourage you to go back and listen to episode 1. But networking is so powerful, but it doesn't stop with who you meet in the room. You want to figure out a way to circle back and connect with that person. And so, you know, you have your digital business card or you have your actual business card or you receive business cards and you want to follow up and just shoot a quick note to say, it was so great meeting you at XYZ. I would love to connect. The other piece about networking is it doesn't have to be folks from your industry. It's all about building relationships. When you are operating at a high level as a professional, it is all about relationships, no matter the industry. And so you meet, you can do virtual coffee dates, you can do in-person coffee dates, you can meet for a drink, whatever your flavor, but still follow up and let that person know that you really enjoyed meeting with them and you would love to figure out how you could connect later. So don't discount the power of networking. And then my last recommendation for increasing visibility is board service. Being a volunteer board member. There are so many nonprofit organizations, both small and large, that are looking for professionals with your particular set of skills. And they need you, and your voice is valuable, and you bring a unique perspective, especially as a mom, coming to the table. And so find 1 or 2 boards that you're able to commit your time to. If you've never participated on a board for a nonprofit organization, the United Way has wonderful resources to help prepare you for how to serve on a board, what being on a board means, and the responsibility that comes with it. And then you can go through a vetting process to determine what board works for you. Some boards meet every month. Some boards meet quarterly. There's all types of nonprofit organizations that fit your particular area of interest and passion and skill sets. And you just go happy board hunting. You can find board opportunities that are virtual. You can find board opportunities through LinkedIn, through networking. Just really put yourself out there as you're at the networking events. Let folks know when you meet nonprofit professionals that you are interested in board service and for them to keep you in mind. Oftentimes boards have, even if they don't have open board seats, sometimes there are smaller volunteer opportunities that can lead to board opportunities in the future. But that is a wonderful way to increase your visibility, because there are other board members from many different industries that you have the opportunity to collaborate with for a greater purpose, who learn more about your particular skill sets that you can build relationship with, and you are then visible. And so as opportunities come about and they know you, that meet your interest and your skill set, you have somebody that can speak your name in rooms when you're not there. So definitely start looking into some board service. So that is strategy number 1, increasing your visibility. Strategy number 2 that I want to talk about are your support systems. Okay, that is so important for moms. It's important for professionals in general, but for moms, we have a bunch of different things in the air, and so we need to work on our support systems. We need both personal supports and you need your professional supports. And so what do your personal supports look like? Sometimes we have to get very creative. And I don't want to take for granted that I personally have a very large family. Okay, I come from a family where I have 6 sisters. I have 5 brothers. I am grateful to say that my parents are still with us. Some of my grandparents are still with us. So I recognize that I do have a significant support system in my motherhood journey. And I know that not everyone has that, but sometimes family is what we create, right? And so even when my blood family is not available to me, my relatives are not available to me to be a support, I have created family by way of some really good friends, some trusted friends that, if I have to go on this work trip or go on a conference, there are folks that I can call. And so think about, who do you have that you can call on? What friends? Make a list. What friends can you call when you need to go to the board meeting or when you need to go to the networking event for an hour or two? Gather those supports. Get your babysitters. What teenagers, okay? When my son was very little, I had a handful of teenagers that I could call on that could be available to me for a weekend time that I needed to go to a work event, or if I needed to study or prepare for a speaking opportunity. I had my army of teenager sitters that, teenagers you can pay at a little discounted rate if you need to. What other teen moms? Okay, I rely on soccer moms sometimes. My son plays soccer. And so those are supports for me. If I know I'm going to be late, or I need to do a drop off to practice, but I can't pick up from practice, or vice versa. I really try my best to be at every game. In fact, I don't think I've missed any of my son's games. But when it comes to practice, or if they have to be somewhere early and he just needs a ride, I have to develop some supports with moms that were not necessarily my friends, but at the soccer game or at practice, I'm building these relationships with some trusted folks in that time, so we can lean on one another when necessary. Neighbors are great supports if you trust them and you have, vetted them. I realize that we live in a different time and you can't just trust everyone with your kids, but if you need someone to look out, I have a neighbor, every time I look at my cabinet, if there's a particular ingredient, because she's a baker, I know I can run over to her real quick without having to, leave my family. But that's a support for me to be able to turn to my neighbor for a quick ingredient or a recipe or a question, or to look out in times of need. So building those relationships. And I think as you stick around the community, you will come to understand the importance of relationships. You can't get to particular levels of leadership without having some really solid relationships in your life. And And then figuring out what else you can outsource. I'm such a fan of Rachel Rodgers. For those who have not listened to her book or read her book, Rachel Rodgers, We Should All Be Millionaires. But she talks about outsourcing some of the daily tasks, right? And so it is very difficult, and you will be kidding yourself to think that you can get to a level of leadership, or once you get to a level of leadership, operate in a healthy way by doing all the things, because you can't. Rachel talks about $1 million thoughts and $1 million decisions by way of getting someone to do that laundry, getting a meal prep service if you can, getting someone to come and scrub your toilets. Outsourcing whatever it is that your family can afford to outsource is a wonderful support that you can pay for if you are able to do that. So I highly recommend that, relying on some paid supports too. And then lastly, I want to talk a little bit about professional supports. You need professional supports in your journey to senior leadership, okay? You need professional support, someone that you can go to just for advice. XYZ happened, you ran into a particular problem or a conflict before you react, or if it was something that you hadn't faced before, you need someone that you can go to kind of process and get some advice on how to proceed. You might need a sounding board. Maybe you had a very bad day and you just need someone to go to. I'll never forget when I worked in a particular hospital system, there was one individual, and I'll say her name because she is just so supportive, and I hope to have her on the show, Miss Kelly Wolford. She was my safe space when we worked together. And if I was going through something personally or professionally, she didn't even have to ask what it was. I could literally go find her on my break and sit in her office, and her chair was where I could just cry and then wipe my face and get up and go back to business. And no one else knew that I was having a bad day, but she was my safe space to just go and let it out. No questions asked and move along. You need to have your sounding board, your safe space. So I didn't have to break down in front of the people, but I had my person that I could go to be a safe space. Find that, and maybe sometimes you might have to be that for somebody else too. You also want your professional supports for learning new things, learning new terminology. Maybe it's somebody that's in another department that has a particular skill set that you are not familiar with. Connect with them, learn from them. I guarantee you that will help you later on down the road. You also want to connect with folks who might be more visible than you, because those are the folks, if you build those relationships, they can introduce you to who you need to connect with. In episode 1, Crystal spoke about asking someone to introduce you to a person in the room. That only happens when you have that relationship and folks can vouch for you, and folks want to actually speak on your behalf and make that introduction. So connect with someone, build a relationship with someone who is more visible than you. Don't be intimidated by that. Most of the time, folks want to help you. Folks will be willing to support you if you just ask, if you have a relationship and a friendly face, okay? And most important, you want to make sure that you have professional supports to have folks to speak your name in rooms when you are not in the room, okay? One of my favorite things, I pride myself on being a connector. I pride myself on identifying opportunities that work really well with my friends and my acquaintances and other professional folks. And so when something comes across my desk, I might say, oh, this will be a great opportunity for so-and-so. That only happens by way of relationship. That only happens because I know whoever I might be mentioning, what they're up to and what they're doing, because it might not be a close personal relationship, but we have established some level of professional relationship that allows me to feel comfortable to mention their name in the room. And so those are my tips. I feel like we're going on and on a little bit, but those are my 2 strategies for positioning yourself as a mother leader. You want to be visible, and you want to establish those personal and professional relationships. Let's talk a little bit more about that. If you have any questions, you have some thoughts, if you want to add to the conversation, please feel free to connect with me on social media. You can find me on The C-Suite Mama, both on Instagram. We have our private group on Facebook. You can also shoot an email at thecsuitemama@gmail.com. I would love to hear from you to add some more strategies on how women who want to be in senior leadership positions can do that. Let me know what it is that you do to increase your visibility. I'm sure I missed something. Okay. So I'd love to hear from you. The next piece of our conversation today, I want to talk about, and I want to offer the opportunity for you to do the same, some advice. And so I'm going to pose a question for you. I'm going to tell you a little bit about one of my challenges for the week, and I would love to hear from the other mothers out there on how you choose to handle it. And then if you want to share one of your questions, a challenge as a mom or a challenge as a professional, either in the C-suite or a mom who wants to be, please reach out to me, shoot me a message. It will, of course, be anonymous. Send me a message at the C-suite mama, MAMA, at gmail.com. I'd love to hear from you. But let's get into it. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about my challenge. As I mentioned, I have an 11-year-old son, okay? And my son is so mature. He is almost like a little man. He's always been kind of ahead of his time. Which has afforded me is both a gift and a curse, because I'm able to give him a little more liberty because I can trust him to handle himself. But at the same time, we are also living in a very flawed world with some serious risk. And so I've been trying to find this delicate balance of not being the helicopter mom, working in health and human services, and having been exposed to all of the impacts of trauma that young people experience. I know that I parent from a little place of paranoia. So anyway, what happened? Recently, he has kind of expanded his friend group, as kids get settled into their new school and their friend groups grow. We're in this adolescent time, and the kids are kind of figuring out who they're going to be with and who their people are. And so he's now fallen into this place of, he has figured out his school friend group, and he's so excited about his friends, and they all have these shared interests and whatever. And so now we are at the age where the kids all want to hang out together all the time, which is great, right? No one wants their kid to just be the loner, right? Because then you worry about, social awkwardness or whatever. And so he's so social, and they hang out. But this particular time, he's requesting to sleep over at a friend's house. Most of his friends throughout the earlier parts of his childhood, I've known the parents, or they, it's curated friendships because it's friends of my friends, or he spent time with relatives because we have relatives all of the same age. But this is really the first time that I've been faced with this request to sleep over friends' houses who I'm not friends with the parents. We haven't really hung out. But at the same time, I also know that my son is very mature, and, we have very good open communication for the most part. And so there is a level of comfort that he could handle himself. But I had to make the tough decision to tell him, no, you can't sleep over. You can hang out, but I'm coming to pick you up at 9:30. Be ready. The sleepover cannot happen. And so what's my question? I feel very comfortable in making the decision to not allow him to sleep over with me not knowing the parents, but let me know. Send me a message on any of the socials, shoot me an email. Let me know. What are your tips for getting to know the parents that you don't know? Because, I feel like I have a pretty good friend circle. I don't necessarily want to be friends, but I want to develop my level of comfort. So help me out. Nobody has written this parenting handbook, right? Because we're all making it up as we go. He is my firstborn. I don't know what I'm doing, guys. Let me know. How does this C-suite mama handle making friends and getting to know these parents who I probably would not have met otherwise, but my son is really excited to be friends. And, they have this whole friend group. So shoot me a message. Let me know. How do you handle it? I don't know what I'm doing. I have no idea what to do. That is my C-suite mama question of the day. Not related to work. It is all about the mama question today. But I would love to hear your questions. Please shoot me an email, the C-suite mama at gmail.com. Moms, join the Facebook group. the C-Suite Mama. There are questions. You have to answer the questions before I approve you to be in the group. We just want to make sure everyone is legit, but please join us in the conversation as we start to build community. There's some really good things that are going to be happening in the very near future. I look forward to hearing from you. Let me know what you want to talk about. Let me know who you might want to see on the show. Please send me recommendations. Thank you so much for joining me here today on episode 3. Episode 3. This is exciting. I hope you enjoy the C-Suite Mama. Thanks for listening.